Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam. This is a podcast for people who love to read and who read to escape into worlds of magic and adventure. But don't let that adventure end when you finish your book.
Join us on Escapists Anonymous to carry on the conversation.
Okay, well, first of all, Dan, episode 50. Welcome everybody to episode 50. We've done so many books, and it's almost 2 years into the podcast.
Yeah,
and we've reached episode 50, a bit of a milestone, and I think it only apt that we celebrate it with the finishing of a trilogy, which we've been doing for the last 3 episodes. This third book in the Green Bone Saga, it's Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Now I should put mine down because yours deserves more of the attention, because that is, for those of you watching on YouTube, that is a beautiful book.
The broken binding edition, with lots of lovely artwork inside.
Show the painted edges. Oh, that's Hilo, I'm guessing.
I presume it's Hilo. And what have we got? We've got a map in the back. Oh, you like a map, don't you?
I do like a map. At the end of this episode, I will be raising a small issue with the geography of this world.
Okay. So, yeah. And then, I mean, even just, and we've got quotes and stuff on the back. Very, very nice dust cover artwork as well, actually.
What I will say is that a lot of care and attention has been lavished over that book and the covering and the artwork. And here we go. I wish I could only say the same about the plot for this third book.
Sort of heartbreaking, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So the top line summary is, everybody, is this trilogy does not stick the landing. A lot to love, still a lot to love, but you got to dig for it. And I think, when you're invested into the characters from the first 2 books, you're probably willing to do quite a bit of that digging to unearth all of those sweet green nuggets of juiciness that still keeps you getting through to the end. But I will not lie, I found this a little bit of a slog.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking for me after having loved Jade War so much.
Yeah, I just really struggling to see what the strategy was here. Like, it felt like it was being made up as it went along. Like, there was no, I guess what I would look for is like tightness. Like, we've got a narrative. It's very clear where we're heading and what the end destination is. And it, bizarrely, in the end, whilst it hadn't really felt like this throughout, I was like, has she decided that this is the story of Hilo's life? The whole thing is the story of Hilo's life, and we just didn't realise it until the last couple of chapters. It's
not about the family. It's about a period of the family that's kind of like framed by Hilo's time as the pillar of the No Peak. But of course, then it isn't, because we had Lan at the start. I think there were a lot of decisions made in this book that kind of run counter to what we saw in the 2 previous ones, in terms of narrative structure, how you focus on characters and develop the plot, the way in which just like how you this became a series of vignettes spread over a large period of time, 20 years, rather than the first 2 books, which covered a period of 6 years. It turned out.
I think it was more like 30 years by the end.
No, I think it said 26 years.
Yeah.
Because at the start of it. So, because again, that introduced that thing about Hilo being, because it was kind of following his leadership, that time frame of like 26 years and 5 months or whatever it is. It's like, oh, that's how long he's been leader. That isn't a framing that we've had in the 2 previous books. So a lot of decisions made here that kind of made this book feel quite different. And for me, it wasn't necessarily that she was, didn't have a plan. What it was that she'd hit a 3rd book and she's like, I've got a lot more story to tell for this family, and I've only been commissioned for a trilogy. So I've got to wedge a lot into this one book. It really felt like this should have been a 5-book series, because there are multiple points where we hit kind of a crescendo in a storyline, and then we have to ramp it back down again to build ourselves back up. You've got the bombing of the JLA, right? Like that felt like, that's a big bit. And also you've got the kidnapping in Shota. Like, these two things could have been the culminations of 2 individual books. Like, you could have had one called, I don't know, like when they're doing in Shota, like Jade Empire, because they're trying to branch out a bit more. You could have had another one that focuses on the control of Jade. The clan freedom movement. That could have been another whole thing.
Yeah. Well, then you also had the thing with who was the mercenaries and that whole showdown. Jim Sunto and his organization, the GSI, and Hilo turning up and doing that whole thing. Then you have Aitmada, and that whole storyline, and that the climax or anti-climax.
I feel like there could have been, like, spread this book out. Like, you're telling a 20-year story, and it's gonna feel more rushed than the other ones because you're having to jump around. Like, we're seeing multiple years passing, and all we're getting is these little snippets here and there, and suddenly I'm so much more disconnected from the characters, how I have been in the 2 previous books. You feel the same way?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess a reflection in the moment, and maybe a question. Do you think that she got fixated on the idea that the book had to end with Hilo dying, and then that's kind of led to this approach? Because I don't think it had to end with Hilo dying. She could have chosen a point in time. She could have brought Ites, all of the stuff that they did, like to bring down. There's a choice about making this long out for 26 years versus saying, well, all of that stuff, all of the economic stuff, all of, reaching out tentacles into the outside world, that could have been done in a shorter period of time. And then you have the whole way that they brought down her operation and all of her intentions. Didn't have to take 26 years.
No, I think with the framing of Hilo's kind of leadership, I see it more as Hilo being a part of let's say being generous, that the 3 books are telling this story of the conflict between No Peak and the Mountain, during which time Hilo is the pillar for most of it, but Aitmada is the main antagonist for that entirety. It's only when she is removed, fully defeated, that the story can end. But that culminates with Hilo kind of symbolically being a wartime pillar and him dying with it. I think also, it made sense to me for Hilo to die at the end because he had made a lot of compromising decisions. So, I guess moralistically on some level, it made sense for him to go down with this period in time. He was also willing to do something else at that very end, the assassination of Aitmada, to take her, even though she'd stepped down. I mean, granted, he was proved right because she was going to do her own sneaky thing, and that's because those two are these kind of these counterpoints. And with the removal of those two through death or exile, it kind of brought a close to that chapter. I think you text me saying the ending was very, very kind of put a bow on it, very neat and tidy, everything wrapped up, all the things pulled back in. And I think, it felt like that, but some of it kind of had to happen in order for us to feel like the story was complete.
Yeah. I don't think you would have been upset if she'd chosen one of those big events that happened throughout the book and said, this is going to be the climax of this. And then, yes, it leaves open the possibility of a book 4 and a book 5 or whatever. And that's a choice. She doesn't have to do that. She's the author. She can say that's the end of that story. You'll never know. It can be your imagination about where that goes. Write some fan fiction.
Let's take roughly the first third of this book, which opens with a kind of a tying up of a loose end, which is make Tar over in Espinia, taking out, I think is it Skinny Reams or someone being shoved off the boat, and tortured. And then it kind of runs up to when the Clanless Freedom Movement bomb the Jade Alliance. And I kind of felt like that is a really good story, but as a result of like the clanless freedom movement hitting their kind of their height of, you know, disruption at that point so early in the novel, like it didn't feel like that should have been you know, within the whole span of this book. It's either that you make that a central point that runs throughout, or you don't have it in here, or you wrap it up. Like, you know, that's why I felt that should have been its own separate book, because if you want to deal with the clanless freedom movement and have that be kind of like a thematic kind of deconstruction of what it is to not be, you know, jaded, then do that. Like, it just meant that, like, you had Barrows still hanging around, occasional mentions to it. It's like, is this coming back? Are they just done with this? Like, because it's like you've made such a thing of it earlier in the novel. Yeah. And if you want to have a thematically coherent novel, like, why are you ditching this so early and just having it be like every now and again someone goes, well, of course we mopped all that up a long time ago.
Well, that's what made me feel like it wasn't planned out. Like the whole build up to Barrow, and then he's not even involved in the thing at the JLA. He's like he's pointless.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives us a lens through which to view it through, but like, why not have a different character, or why not actually just make him part of that? And then have him blow himself up at the JLA, and at least he's then been instrumental in something that's happened.
What are we doing with him? You know, like, he's not a likable character. It's not that we're like, oh, he survived to the end. Oh, Barrow, what a survivor. So good on him. Like, he is a horrible, selfish character. We're told that by multiple characters. You know, the Americans were like, you're just looking out for yourself. You know, sorry, not the Americans, the Aspenians.
Freudian slip.
You know, like, you're just looking at yourself. That's why we can pay you, and you'll do this. And, you know, when he has that bit with Nico, he's like, don't you understand? I killed your father. Aren't you going to do anything? And then Nico goes, I don't. You're beneath me. Like, Mada's the one who kind of, you're just a tool, a pawn, who were pointed in that direction. I'm mad at her. You know, this is all like, you're literally nothing to me.
He's almost like, you didn't though.
Yeah. For Fonda Lee to make a decision to have Barrow being the only character in this book who isn't a part of the call in a circle, who isn't like, you know, an external green bone or anything like that. He's the one character we've got which is external to all of this. He's a perspective we don't get anywhere else of what it is to not be part of the clans, to not be a green bone, right? And for that decision to make a, like, you know, we see like how hard it is. Like, if you want to have any kind of agency in this world, it's really difficult, because if you want Jade, you're excluded from it because there's an elite faction that kind of says if you weren't educated because you didn't have the right upbringing or connections, you just don't get it. Like, you try and have other routes to try and earn fame and power, and, well, it's usually end up resulting into crime. Like, he's constantly trying to make his way. As much as he's not a nice character, you see him as this person who's like, I'm just trying to have some kind of agency in this world. And for her to be like, at the end, to be like, you're nothing, you have no relevance to the storyline ultimately, because even the main, like, triggering point that happened with you in the first book is now being said by a main character it doesn't matter. So what are we supposed to say about this character? And for him to just be like this useless figure, like, and you know, are we saying there's an elitist perspective here that's being promoted, which is that, like, at the end of the day, some people are just better than others, and others need to know their place?
Yeah. Well, he's the taxi driver at the end, right?
Yeah, when he says kick it, and, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, the
implication. And that was a bit also like,
yeah,
this doesn't add anything.
Don't bring him back if he's such an unlikable character, and we've been told by characters you've written that he's not relevant. What do we care? Like, there's no kind of like nice circularity to it. It's not like, oh, the threat's still there about clanless freedom movement, because we've been told multiple times that that's a done thing, and that hasn't really had any relevance for the last 400 pages.
Yeah, it was a shame, and I think also the thing, you know, I often talk about plot-led books versus character-led books or stories. This felt like it was trying to be a world-building led story, and I just don't think that works. Like, so much of the motivation was about kind of showing stuff that's happening in places that just didn't have any relevance really to the main storyline, and could have just been stuff that we were told happened off screen. And you know, like going out with what's Hilo and Wen's daughter's name, Jaya, that whole thing with what happened there, like, you didn't need to see that. I mean, like, the whole which one was it? Make Tar. Oh my god, I was like, who cares? Just like, we don't need to have the follow-up of what's going on in some, in the arse end of Espenia. Like,
it's again that tying up of everything. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we had this thread where it was down in whatever the name of that southern Espenian city was.
Yeah.
And, like, oh, well, we need to have something going on there just to know that what's his face, the bad Keck is dealt with. It's like, is this relevant to the central plot? Like,
Yeah.
are we saying, because again, it's nice to, to have Mektar have his end and not just be exiled. Fine. You're choosing to bring him back. For what purpose? Why are we seeing this?
The purpose was for Andy to be shown that, like, oh, he's made a decision to go and basically have this guy killed.
Yeah.
But like that, again, we could have just found that out.
Yeah.
That could have been a paragraph of text or a bit of dialogue where it's like John Remy, he's been killed, and it turns out it was Mektar, and then, like, whatever, like, and then we find out that it was Andon that did it, and it shows Andon's got this kind of ruthless clan
here's the thing,
based
is like,
sort of.
why is Andon doing that? Because we know that he's constantly, like, in and out of the thing, and he's doing it to help out Hilo, I guess. But then, you've got one of his plot lines is his relationship with Jehu, his partner, the guy who works in the film industry, the artist, sorry. And it's like, well, we understand there's a bit of conflict, and Andon's going above and beyond to have someone assassinated, right? I was thinking, well, at some point this is going to come up and be a point of conflict between them, because he wants to be so outside of the clan, doesn't want to be part of, like, the cause that kept at arm's length, because they've mentioned that a few times, and this is going to have an important relevance to Andon. Like, there's going to be a point of conflict where he and Jehu find some kind of resolution, but we don't even have some kind of thing where, like, they have a huge conversation. They have an earlier one, and it's like, well, this doesn't feel resolved. And then there's nothing since. And then we get a few mentions of going, well, Jehu sometimes comes along, but most of the time he avoids if it feels it's too no-peaky. And then that's just it. It's like, okay, so you've introduced a love interest for him in a relationship that it's got a point of conflict that isn't properly resolved. And you've even got instigating moments that could force a resolution to that, or a kind of counterpoint about saying something about what it is to be in a relationship with someone who wants to be so outside of the movement. But we have no kind of analysis of that, of what that means. And you're kind of like, you're feeding us these moments for Andon's character development and then balking from them. And then at the end, he's just like, I think I'll go into politics.
Yeah.
So based on which bit? Which bit?
But I think, and again, like, all of that makes me think that most of the motivation is to, like, show more of the world and show how good the world building is, which we already know how good the world building is, but, like, you have to then make the story good, like, and actually what that needed was, Jade City was very much focused on Jean-Lune and kept very local. We had the expansion of the world with Jade War, which was mostly really great, and showed us this brilliant mind that Fonda Lee's obviously got, and like built all this stuff into the economic, the political, the cultural significance outside of KCON. And then I felt like it needed to just come back. It just needed to, like, more and more come back to KCON. And it's not to say it can't have more reference to and more involvement with the outside world, because we've now had that opened up to us. But I just got so tired of, like, feeling like momentum was building with certain plot lines or characters, and then all of a sudden we have a chapter off with Mektar, who we haven't had any chapters with up until this point, or
perspectives. We know you don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I gave up counting on this one. I was like, okay, this is just going to be a thing with the book, and I just far too much of it was to show us the world and not to advance the story. See,
I think there was an end point that she wanted to get to, and come hell or high water, she would get there, even if the structure of a single novel wasn't conducive to it. I think, as Jade Legacy is a novel, if it had just been a final bit where it was setting up for the next generation, the end of the long, multiple book spanning feud between what is Hilo and Shay and Aytmada, right? We've had other people come and go, but this could have been a book where we had so much more, but learning about Toshon, Jaya being set up over there with her little knives and all that. Because when we had that scene, you're right, it was completely extra, because I'm guessing that Fonda Lee had this idea in the world. This is what Jaya's off doing, and I really need to mention that because otherwise I'm never going to use that idea. Fine. It's a pretty cool scene where she rises up with her little knives and she takes out Six Hands Unity clan leader. You know, like, cool. But then, again, we have no other thing. You've been spent as ages of us learning who Jaya is. She's like, you know, very kind of like very independently driven. She's very different from her brothers. She can't, like, you know, she wants to be in charge. She wants to be the Horn. But like, we don't even get to the point where she becomes the Horn. And if you'd have had this as a final book where like this properly, the torch is handed off to Jaya and Nico and whoever else has been brought in. Because, you know, like, imagine you had a whole book in this series where Nico isn't there. You know, that he goes off as part of GSI and he goes off and has a whole thing where he's, you know, being a mercenary, and then he comes back after Rue's death at the start or an end of a previous novel. Big arrival. Here it felt so underwhelming because it's like, well, this isn't just another event, we're going to jump forward a bit more. And, you know, we had a single chapter where he's in GSI and it's like, oh, we just killed some kids, man. This is no good. The Aspenians are really okay with this and I'm not okay with this. And then he comes back and it was like, is this coming back because of Rue? Is it because of that? Is it because of just his general experience? We won't know because you haven't shown us much else. You've had so little time to have his absence have meaning, because it's not even been a huge amount of the book because you've jumped forward so much in time. He's only gone 3 years, and it doesn't, you know, like in an earlier book, it would have felt like a significant time. Shay was away for 2 years. Andon was away for 3 years. He's felt like times of development.
Yeah, that was a whole book.
Yeah, for him, I don't feel like that's been earned in the same way.
Yeah.
So, like, his return is completely underwhelming, and I wanted more about that because it deserved more.
Yeah.
Like, your son has fled. He's joined in with a mercenary group, and, you know, you have, like, when slaps him, you know, Hilo's like, I forgive you, but I'm not all the way there yet. And then we have to move on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and that's the thing. I mean, it is a massive book. Like, it, you know, it's, I think this one's 830, maybe more pages.
No, my version is like 750.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. Maybe some artwork. Yeah. Here and there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's 250 pages worth of stuff that you could chop out and it would make no difference. I mean, it would make a positive difference to the actual reading experience. Yeah, and I just, again, like, if you originally were commissioned as a trilogy, like, fair enough, but then you needed to have changed the scope of what this trilogy was going to be about, because this third book could not handle the weight of the amount of stuff that needed to go into it, and it just means the whole thing falls apart. Like, and I've got so many other examples. Like, ones were like, you know, a little while ago we read Alchemized and we couldn't finish it, right? And one of the biggest gripes I had about the writing was when you'd have a scene that's so extended because you'd have a character say a line and it triggers a flashback or an additional expo dump. Like, Mada has retreated to her mansion following the whole extremely like, we're told loads and loads of exposition about what's happened with the business, with Art Wiles, the exposure of like her involvement with, you know, all the drug running and yada yada yada. And she's at that point where she's about to be defeated, and Shay goes to the mansion to visit, and it's like she gets out of the car. She walks past the protesters. Now, let me tell you about the protesters. The protesters are this. They're doing this, and they've been gathering here for the last few weeks. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we've done a big chunk on that. Shay goes inside, and she sees Aidmada. Since Aidmada was last seen, this happened. Hello, Shay. I'm so glad you came. Well, and of course, Shay immediately thought about all the other things that happened in the last few weeks since then. It's like, oh my God, this scene is supposed to be tense, and you keep having to jump away to give us so much context about every single line being given to fill in. This is torturous. ChatGPT, tell me what happens in this chapter in 3 bullet points. Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. And the thing that annoyed me a little bit more than that with the writing was we had constant explainers of stuff, that had happened in this book.
Yeah,
There would be an interaction, and it would remind you of something. It's like, I know because I'm reading this book currently. You don't have to fucking tell me that like the last time these people met, this happened, because you've told me that already when it happened.
The explanation of the jade trawling company, we have that explained to us multiple times in this book. That's the one that stuck out to me. Like when Hilo's at the thing is like, and of course the trawlers would be out there finding the jade just offshore, and they'd be bringing them into this port where it'd be refined. It's like, we know why he's here. We know what the purpose of this thing on the human islands is. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and it's just even that, like, it's not even like telling us, reminding us of motivation, just functional admin for the world. Like, and this is the thing as well, because I feel like there's, by not making this like, a 5-book series rather than a 3-book series, there's also stuff that I feel like we've missed out on because stuff has to get put away. Like, ones that don't even get an individual chapter, where you're kind of left wondering, like, the Abakai don't really get beyond Jehu, like no one really gets to learn about the again. And so because you're focusing on this clan and you've spent so long building up the world, and we had a second book which is about the wider thing, and we're learning about all these things about, Hilo's okay with Stone Eye, and we're getting past these prejudices. The Abakai are such a kind of like, it's almost like they're a background indigenous people who are just there for a bit of flavour. Yeah. And it's like you've introduced a character who has that perspective, and we get so little of it. And you've got the clanless freedom movement. Have a book that is about clanless freedom and the Abakai and different perspectives within this. Have it that the Abakai do also want rights, and they are an indigenous people and needs to be recognised. You could have had such an interesting book dealing with those who would choose to take violence into their hands and what it means to do it more peacefully, getting rights for people who are being forced to harvest jade. Like, there remains a subclass of people within this world that has there's no kind of restitution, there's no kind of attempt to bring them up and recognise that you've got effectively a serf class on this island.
Yeah.
People who will never be able to access government or clan power or anything, and they are voiceless within this book. If you're going to put them in, give them their moment. Otherwise, you're saying, I'm happy with this being a part of the system.
Yeah.
And just putting it in, because Fonda Lee, you didn't have to put that in. You chose to put that in and do nothing with it and have that status quo remain.
Yeah, so my feeling was that what she could have done with this was have, I don't know, almost 4, 5, 6 novellas that tell the big ticket stories, and then make the final book whatever, like pick a point and then work towards that climax and the legacy. But have the JLA bombing, have the
Shotar expansion, kidnapping. I thought that, because I think that was
the big action things were actually like really enjoyable reads. Like I was engaged and fully drawn in. I was just a bit pissed off about like the energy that it took to get there. But yeah, you have to have one about Rue and like his death and like that. Yeah. Have the what we said about the Jim Suntone. You can build the stuff about the Abakai into that. Build out like the lore of the world. LORE, not lore.
Yeah.
And then set up the final book to come in and say, we are now 20 years in the future from where you picked up from Jade War. You can choose to read these 4 or 5 novellas if you want, but here's where we're at. Like this and this have happened. This is where the clan war's at. You'll enjoy this more if you read the novellas, but if you don't, then here's how it all ends.
and like having that wider, like having the confidence of world building, right? Let's have a look at Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London as a recent good example. Now, he has multiple books in that series, and they vary between novels and novellas, short stories, because he is adapting the story and just telling it by the length that it needs to be. Like, if it doesn't need to be a huge 400, 500, or in this case 700 page book, it's not going to be, because that doesn't serve the story. And I think, again, like having to be like, well, the third book's going to be this epic time span thing. It's like, well, we've got to ask what the purpose is of if you're going to go and put in all that effort. And going back to what we were just touching upon there, like, you know, with some of those moments, like there was parts in this book I was gripped, absolutely gripped. When Wen and Shay have been kidnapped, and you've got the two guards as well, like I was like, this is great. This is such a high point of the book, and you know, again, narratively speaking, this should be the end of one of your novels, because it has a huge moment in which Shay would end by going, I can't wear Jade anymore. And we're like, well, where does this leave her?
Yeah.
And, you know, all this does is to go like, well, turn the page and we'll jump forward a few years and you'll see that she's get on with it. She stayed as a weatherman and, you know, things are normal.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, we saw between, with Wen early on in this book, when, you know, she's still recovering and occasionally like the stuff from her near-death experience is still affecting her. It's good. It's really good, because you're like, oh yeah, like this is, you know, she's still struggling and years later, and it's a callback to this stuff. Like I felt like that was handled better. What I didn't like with Wen was that after Shotar, she was then pretty absent from the rest of the book. It became about other people. And if the book had ended there and we'd started another novel, then that makes more sense, because you're introducing characters into a new novel, being like, well, this one's not about her. The last book was about her. This one is about her, and she becomes more of a background character. So like when Hilo dies and she goes up to see him, and she comes out in funerary attire, all whited up, and she goes up to the garden to grieve, and we aren't given her perspective, because it feels like the story's moved on from her, and she's been such an important character, and I just feel like it's such a disservice to Wen for us to be like, oh well, we'll just watch her do that. Like I want to see her perspective of this, because she's a character we've had before. Why are you denying us this chance for a major character to have this major grieving point? She's been really absent. Like she just, you know, occasionally pops in, and Nico thinks like, well, my mum wouldn't be very happy about this. It's like, don't treat this character like that, because you've got no space for it. You know, like and then you've got choices to have characters hover around who are just taking up word count.
Like there were several bits that were obviously done really, really well that drew you in, but it just wasn't. It isn't one book, and it needed to be much more critically edited. I just don't understand how we keep having these conversations where we're like, there's great stuff here. Why wasn't the editor saying, is it all about deadlines? And it's like, oh, fuck it. Like, you know, we don't have time.
Well, and they could have said, we could make this 5. Like, you know, when someone stretches a series, like George R.R. Martin just keeps stretching out Game of Thrones well beyond, you know, the original trilogy he wanted. This one, it feels like there's such a legitimate argument to say, make it 5 books. Maybe the publisher was like, no, you get 3 and you're done. So wrap it up.
I mean, I'm convinced that I remember, and again, it could be wrong, but one of my favourite series is The Demon Cycle by Peter V. Brett, and that's a 5-book series. And I'm convinced that it was talked about as a trilogy. And then by the time it got to the end of book 2, they were saying, "Oh no, this is going to be a 5-book series." So surely that. You know, if you've got something really good that you believe in as a publisher, surely you just say, this is worth to either taking the time to make this book right, or, you know, investing in. Yeah. It doesn't have to be 3, 4, 5 like novellas, like we were saying, like be creative.
Yeah. And because it just felt like if it wasn't the publisher putting pressure on her, then what I'm getting the message is she's done with this world, which is a shame, because she's put so much work into it. I know there's been some other short stories that have come out since, but like, you know, all I got the sense of was someone had made a decision that this was going to be it for the main core.
I had the exact same thought. I was like, has she just decided, like, I'm sick of this and I don't want there to be any chance that someone asks me to write another book in this world? I'm going to make sure that, like, it feels like there's nothing left to talk about. Who knows? And
it's just such a shame, because I was so keen for this, and, you know, like we took a little bit longer for me to read this book. I mean, I thought it's not going to be a stretch. I'm going to power through this like I have with the other 2. It's been great. Like, but I had to take a break of a few days when reading it, because I was just like, I was at a lull in the storyline. It was jumping forward a bit. Like, I think it was just after the Shotar bit, and the plot was chugging, trying to pick up again and give me a new thread to follow. And I was like, I am struggling to have a reason to finish this. Yeah. And I didn't want to DNF another book so soon. But it came real close, and I knew that you'd finished it, and I was just like, all right,
But in reality, if this was book one, you would have DNF'd it. I would. I wouldn't have finished it. No. I only finished it because the first two had kind of, been good enough for me to want to.
But it's because maybe if this. But here's the thing: if this had been book one, and we'd been introduced with this structure of like this book is telling the length of the lifetime of Hilo, like his leadership, and then another book picked up with Nico as the pillar, and that was telling his, and then but then that's a different focus to how that story is being told, and I have a different expectation, to change how the story is being told for a third book in a trilogy, and again. If it's all standalone novels telling different bits, fine. But you've advertised as a trilogy. And again, my gripes with trilogies and how we structure them. You don't just change how you've written your books in the third one because it's thematically different. And I don't know if you thought you were doing something a bit, just trying something out. It hasn't worked. But have a trilogy that is these kind of time. Like if another book came along and this was set with like Nico's kids or something like that, cool. Like fresh start, see how the timelines have developed. We'd be probably more in line with the 2025 equivalent technology as well to see how that's changed. Just the disappointment of like the Jade. And how it was used, SN2 coming in as a better chemical, and like how we see it being adapted into the modern world. I actually kind of respected with Jade itself of we never had any attempt to delve into the magic behind it, even though these blooming books kept telling if it was magic. The blurbs, we haven't done the blurb, but opens up with blood for the clan, magic for the world, anything for the family. Is it magic? Does it matter if it's magic or not? Or if it's just, because the fact that we're calling it bioenergetic Jade in Espenia, great. But then, I just feel like that's
kind of one of the themes of the book in a way, isn't it? That the people's perception of what Jade is as outside of Kacon, and trying to win that hearts and minds battle in Espenia to get legislation passed and things like that. Like, is it safe? Is it, whatever. But again, all of that felt to me like it was more focused on world building than plot development. And as you were talking, I was thinking we haven't massively touched on Andon, and I just felt like it was so disappointing for him to go from super central main character to kind of secondary. Like he's we'll use him to send him off to
I don't mind, like I was saying with Wen, if Wen had become a more minor character in a later book after having her peak, the height, being in Espenia and then being in Shotar and having these things and the times moving on. Because sometimes it's okay for other characters to have their spotlight, but like you say, Andon had moments early on in this book, and then again, it just seemed to be forgotten about, I thought he was going somewhere different. And I even kind of respect the fact that he never had his superpower moment where he was like, I'm so powerful with Jade. He had that realization that he could exist without Jade. Fine. But at least give him a bit more to do, apart from every now and again, something major happens. Someone gets back to the call residence and Andon was there waiting, or Andon just turned up and it knew that something bad had happened. It's like, oh, this is him. He's there when something serious is going down.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, and I refer to this quite a lot, thinking about Brandon Sanderson's lectures about writing, and he talks about this idea of sort of promise, progress, and payoff.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was so much promise in the early stages with Andon. It's like he is this person who's super sensitive to Jade, he's got and perhaps the payoff was supposed to be he's amazing at medical stuff because of that, but it felt like a bit of an anticlimax.
We don't even get that though.
Not really.
His channeling powers are insane and he's performing amazing operations, and that's the reason why bioenergetic Jade gets legalized over in America. He's there giving confidence. Espenia.
But and it's not about that, is it? It's about the fact that he looks Espenian. That's the reason why bioenergetic Jade becomes a legally used medical product.
Yeah, and I feel like at the end, when like there's almost a kind of justification of, when he went into politics, he won loads, and if anything, anyway, because everyone knows that he gave up the jade anyway, and like even though he was so super good at it, everyone really respected him even more, and that's why, because he chose not to do it, that's why it's even better for his characters. Therefore, it's justified. It's like, come on. Like what a little post hoc justification for why you didn't do anything cool with him. And I think as well, Mada as a character, I really feel like she was a good villain. And when she has her last gasp attempt at trying to kill everybody there, because it's almost an inversion of when she has she's been stabbed and she's bleeding out and no one stands up to save her. I thought that was I got chills when I was reading that bit, because I was like, that's so cool. Like everyone just sitting there going, well, this is awkward. And she's like, screw the lot of you, out the window, and then Andon and Shay save her. Like, such a cool moment for a character that then becomes, for a lot of the book, distant. Oh, she's wearing a scarf again. Oh, like we Shay has a couple of moments with her in the temple, and then that's it. Like, I get it, you want her to have an antagonist, but you've given her too much humanity for me to be happy with her being pulled back like that.
Yeah.
You just had a point where she was like on death's door, Andon and Shay save her, and then we barely see her again, other than for, well, haven't you done well, Calls? You've bested me again. Yeah. And then that's it. That's what we get. And, I feel like if she'd have been more of a kind of aggressive presence, doing things more like actively to thwart the Calls, rather than being all this distant, corporate stuff, so that when they exile her, and she's spitting venom, being like, you can't just exile me, you've got to kill me, like, it felt so muted, because I wanted to really, really hate her, and I didn't hate her enough, and I didn't really kind of feel that it was earned that, we've neutralized your power, you'll never fight again. It just kind of seemed a bit distant. Nika going, well, this is a decision I've made, and good luck to you. We don't care about you. I don't care. I care about you as little as I care about Barrow. Who's Barrow? I don't know.
Yeah. It's such a shame, and like, it's a real frustration, isn't it, when you invest that much time in a trilogy? I guess sort of. So questions to sort of wrap up. We haven't really sort of talked massively about recommending stuff in recent episodes, but I was thinking about this, and again, the fact that I forked out for Broken Binding edition for my bookshelves, which one of my criteria for that is like, I want my bookshelves to be full of books that I would recommend to people to read. And could you recommend the first two and say, just read the first two and just be happy with with where it ends? Because
it's sold as such a trilogy, and we're really, really kind of, there's going to be an end to this. You know what? Like, maybe, like, how does it end? Like, at the end of Jade War, you've got like when
kills the guy that I can't remember the guy that was responsible for killing her brother.
Yeah.
So, and Andon saves Wen's life.
Almost, you could almost recommend it, but it would still feel disappointing. But like, it's a really cool world, and it's such a shame because, again, if you'd made the books are almost standalone enough. Like, the first one is a bit. The second one, there's a lot more momentum to it, but it just all gets kind of wrapped up. It's almost like what you should do is like read the first little bit of the third book and then you just give up.
Or I wonder whether someone's already done this on Reddit. Someone should create a guide for which chapters of Jade Legacy to actually read. Yeah. You could probably just like skip over loads of stuff and get a really good series of events that you can follow. Probably 500 or so pages, maybe.
There is a good plot in there. There is. It's just there's so much around it of like these novels that could have been that, and it's like like a fan edit which breaks this into several things and adds in extra content to flesh out those three underdeveloped storylines. It's interesting. I've never really read a book that's failed like this in this particular way. where it feels like a hodgepodge of lots of different novels, especially one that isn't like a standalone or isn't like a first part of a trilogy where they're throwing too many ideas at the wall. Like the fact that this is trying to wrap up and it's just like a big messy mess of like change of narrative structure. There's so many questions about what
I think it's very, very difficult to tell like a really tight story over 26 years. But that said, I did shed actual tears when Hilo died. I thought it was very emotionally delivered.
Yeah, I again, like those moments where I'm just like, I was glad I read that bit of the book. I'm glad I pushed on to the end.
Yeah.
And, Hilo had his moment. And then, but then you go and have what is now Kobanато rather than Ait Ado, after he changes his name back, and Nico in the garden. And, and Arto's kind of like, well, my clan's probably done for anyway, and everything's going to be fine for you, and you're all going to be good. And here's how I see everything going over the next few years as we kind of become nothing, and you take over everything. And I think that kind of covers it. You're good, right? Yeah, thanks, bye.
Yeah, and there was that thing where you thought for a while, I was like, I think we're heading for like a sort of peace, a status quo. But actually, what we got was no peak one.
Yeah,
one clan is dominant over the other, and that's the ending.
This is what Aitmada always wanted, but not hers. And, I don't think we really learn any lessons about what Jade could or couldn't be and what it should be and how there are other people in the society who denied Jade and that's a problem. No. Back to being no peak one, and that's the best outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my final thoughts is, as I mentioned this earlier in the episode, I've got to bring this up. Start of this book. Hilo is driving around and he's blasting the heater in his car because of the icy winter. And then we jump to the same period in time of Make Tar is over in Espenia killing someone, and it's also mentioned how...
Shall I get my map out?
Yeah, get the map out. And I thought, hold on, I think I've seen this map. They're on, like, again, if this is structured like the Earth's globe, you've got Kekon.
Kekon is down here somewhere.
No, other side.
Oh, other side, sorry. I'm in the camera. Kekon's down there.
And Port Massey is up there.
Somewhere up here.
If there was an equator, one should be in summer, one should be in winter. That doesn't make sense. They can't both be in winter. Now, if the globe spins differently and the map's being presented differently, of course. But if you're going to present a map like that, we're going to see that there's an equator, or assume that there is, and assume that there's some kind of seasonal change, as we're being told that there is. So I was just like, that's crazy. How are they both in winter? And maybe I should have picked up on the issue of that at the start of the novel, that this was not going to be the most enjoyable thing or most thought through book out of the trilogy, because, that's
it's the one place she's fallen down on the world building.
Yeah.
Where's the equator, Fonda Lee?
Literally unreadable. So, yeah, I think overall, I can't recommend the trilogy as a whole because it's so disappointing. Not just because of the winter thing. But like, yeah, I think it's just such a shame, and yeah, we've spent a lot of time here picking through all the flaws, and I wish we could have had a bit more time to re-emphasize that there's a bunch of good bits in this book.
Yeah,
it's just you've got 700 plus pages to wade through, and it's a lot of work for not enough reward.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I if someone said like I want to read a book that's got amazing world building, I would point them towards Jade City and Jade War, but I would have to caveat any recommendation with the fact that Jade Legacy just doesn't stick the landing. But then I hate doing that. I hate saying that in a recommendation because I want, I kind of either want to say, yeah, do read it or don't. Because if you're saying like, oh, Jade Legacy doesn't stick the landing, then you're sort of colouring probably the view of how they see the whole thing. But yeah, maybe the jury's out on that one for me. And yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed committing to a full trilogy, and I think we should maybe pick something else to do a series of. It's been nice having three focused on the same world and working through it.
Is there a recent trilogy out there that anyone could recommend that we can hammer through in 3 episodes? You know, like I really want one that sticks the landing, like or one that like two of them are out and the third one's about to come out, and we could like, you know, coincide it with that one coming out. Like, let us know out there if there's anything like that, because you know I love getting into a big story, and especially if it sticks the landing.
Yeah, or something. I mean, that doesn't have to be new. That could be
A retrospective,
or a classic, or you know, like something that you want, that you'd be interested to hear our views on for whatever reason, whatever's wrong with you.
If your opinions aren't good enough for yourself.
Yeah. So let us know. I mean, if you made it through Jade Legacy, get into the comments. If you're here on YouTube.
Yeah. Did you prefer the structure? Did you think it benefited from having these time jumps?
I haven't looked at any other reviews on like the Fable app, but I'd be very surprised if anyone's read this and been like, "Oh, this was exactly what I wanted." But I mean, and it's like you said, feels so different from the other two. But yeah, so drop us a comment. If you're here on YouTube, down below, like and subscribe while you're here. That helps us out. If you're listening on any other podcast platform, drop into our DMs on social media at Escapists Anonymous Pod. Like I said, DMs, comment, whatever. We want to hear your perspectives on this, or recommendations for another trilogy that we should dive into. Be great if it wasn't 3 books that were over 600 pages, but like, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to be a hard rule. And yeah, in the next episode, we're going to go just for a standalone, just as a little bit of change of pace. Yeah. And we are reading Godstorm by Saltaire Townsend. And that's a new release in January 2026. So nice to have something really fresh to get stuck into and have a review of. Is
it alternative history as well? Like it's kind of like Romans?
Yeah, my understanding is if the Roman Empire never fell.
All right. Okay.
So
I look forward to another alternative history discussion.
Yeah, your specialist subject. So yeah, if you're listening or watching in real time with us and you want to get on board with that conversation, get reading, and we'll look forward to you joining us in that episode. But all that's left to say is thanks for watching, listening to this one, wherever you're doing so, and it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.